Hey, this is Brent Leary, and I'm still in Denver for Experience 19 with Genesys, and it's really cool. I'm just so glad not to be in Vegas for a conference. I'm just very happy about that right now. But I'm also happy to be speaking with Chris Connolly, who is VP of Product Marketing for Genesys, and we talked last year.
We did.
I guess it was a pretty significant amount of time ago, but it was such a good conversation that I really wanted to do it face to face this time. Here in Denver. So thanks for joining me, man.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm glad you're here in Denver.
Thank you. And so just by your accent, I could tell you're a native North Carolinian, right?
Oh, absolutely. Born and bred in the other South, the deep South of Australia.
Okay. that is a bit deeper than North Carolina.
Yeah.
But now you just told me something. So and I kind of picked it up. You are able to kind of naturally, it sounds, change your accent. So when you're talking with a bunch of, what do you call them, Yanks? Is that kind of?
Yankees is I think the word I used.
Yanks, that's okay.
Yeah, well, I don't know if this is by necessity. It's a bad habit of mine. As soon as someone starts speaking with an accent, I tend to imitate it, and I do it very subconsciously. But when I want to be understood, I'll usually try and mimic you a little bit. And yeah, so you'll probably hear it today. I'll start to use my R's a little bit more.
Okay. But since you're in North Carolina, and that is the South.
It is the South.
Do you have a Southern accent?
I haven't mastered the Southern drawl just yet, but I'm working on it. It depends where I'm in Raleigh, and Raleigh's a bit of a mixing pot these days. So I talk to people from Virginia all the time, people coming down from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So I feel like my little neighborhood doesn't really have too many of the Southerners.
No natives, huh?
No natives, but go out to Greensboro or something, and yeah, you're starting to hear it.
All right, well, just for my sake, give me your best y'all.
Oh, y'all crazy.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Great. All right, so let's move past the accents then a little bit. Then let's talk a little bit about one of the areas I kind of focus in on is around conversational interfaces, a little bit of chatbot, but really focusing a lot more on the voice side of things.
Right.
What are you seeing right now when it comes to, let's say, the general conversational interfaces? But where do you see voice in 2019?
Well, that's essentially now, right? So voice is changing for the good. I think it's become a bit of a renaissance of voices is important, and that human-to-human contact is becoming increasingly important. But at the same time, businesses are necessarily looking to cut costs. And the thing, I might have said this to you last time, I don't know if I did, but your next voice project in a lot of enterprises won't be an IVR, it will be a voice bot.
Right.
And I think that is just the way that we will see this unfold in 2019, 2020. So there's a couple of different shifts in the market, which are very cool. Google, Amazon have really commoditized speech recognition, text-to-speech. They're providing as API services now. Lots of vendors with very cute solutions doing everything from transcription to voice biometrics. So that is just awesome by itself. And what that means is customers are now able to have a bit more of choice on how their recognizers work, how precise they are. A lot of this is driven from cloud, whether it's the Genesys cloud or partner cloud or one of our technology partners. And so the customer adoption is, it's still at the early days, I gotta say, but everyone's exploring it. And this week in Denver, I don't know how many conversations I've had with customers that are like, so, tell me a little bit about this voice bot thing. How do I do it? Can I use it on digital? Can I use it on messaging apps? And so, yeah, there's sort of this coming together of that, I'll call it very loosely, bot technology. And then, like we saw last year with Google Duplex, that's kicked off a whole range of discussions. with people trying to emulate that and have their own sort of duplex type technology. There's raised a ton of ethical issues again of am I talking to a bot? But at the end of the day, the conversational AI is absolutely top of everyone's talking list at the moment. Seeing it very much in the sales and marketing side in particular. I happened to be at another conference, a Serious Decisions conference in Austin recently, and conversational marketing is a thing, and the underpinning of that is conversational AI. So I think we're going to see more of that, and yet more of that as 2020 rolls on.
Interesting, because a lot of folks look at using things like Alexa or Google Home more as like a self-service channel, being able to get a question answered quickly or ask for a service. But you're seeing marketing starting to show up. Can you give me a couple of examples of how that's coming out?
So the interesting one, and I'll liken the paradigm to like ad space and ad tech. We're in a world where you bid on words, and those words for ads, when you type into a search box, they're driven by the Googles of the world and LiveRamp and a whole host of others. But people are bidding on those words. For voice interfaces, there's this sort of tension, if I call it that way, that we're now starting to see, or expecting to see, words in voice interfaces starting to be monetized too. And some of the use case there is like, it is self-service with Alexa and Google Home. Next time you start to order, diapers for your kid or paper towels for the kitchen, unless you're specific as a customer, you just let Amazon choose the brand that was put into your shopping cart. And maybe that's based on your personal history. Maybe in the future that's a bit different. So it's still self-service, but I think marketers are really starting to understand that a bit more. And then the secondary piece is something that I like, call it a bit of a gold mine of data, which is up until this point, whether you're calling in on an 800 number on a website, there was like those temporary numbers that you can get, and people doing like marketing communications analysis and saying, okay, I saw this ad in print, I saw it on TV, and they're sort of tracking that. That's still there, but now the conversation data of the voice transcript is starting to be mined for insights. And going back to what we were saying before, like the commoditization of speech and text, particularly speech recognition, means that you can ship all these recordings off that might be passive, mine them for data, get new signals out of them, and then that happens on those voice endpoints, it happens on your phone, it happens in the IVR. So imagine that new set of data that every time you speak to that Google Home and you say, hey, what's the weather in Denver? That's being mined, right? So, you're going to Denver. Guess what? You might start to see ads for hotels in Denver next time you search online, or next time you start to browse. So there is a sort of this sort of connectedness of voice, and I think anyone that's got one of these devices at home, they're really convenient. I've got a cat, and I like to bring in flowers every now and again.
Really?
Yeah, I love flowers at home. I think it just
nice.
opens up the house. What I didn't realize, because it wasn't my cat, is that there's all these, like lilies, which is one of my favorite, are really, really poisonous to cats. And they're lethal, in fact. So after learning this, I now ask questions of Alexa and Google. I'm like, hey, is this plant poisonous for cats? And Alexa, always will say, I can't help you with that. And Google will say, yes, and this is the poison. And I'm like, wow. So bolting on that search interface into voice, these things are so convenient now. I can't see them going away. I just see them exploding. Sorry, it's a really long-winded answer.
No, that's a great answer, because I mean that scenario, eventually you could almost see it saying, hey, when you ask for maybe a recommendation for what kind of flowers I should buy, well, we know that you bought such and such in the past based on this. This might be a good, something like that.
Absolutely, it's coming.
Okay, so what are the things, or maybe one or two things that you still see as roadblocks or challenges for folks to fully embrace, these businesses to fully embrace voice as an interaction channel to their customers?
So maybe a couple of things. First, there is sort of there's still this long tail of things that customers ask that are not programmed into a voice bot. And so almost every single, and that goes for text as well, we've seen some good developments and 80% containment in some ways of having people essentially self-service in that channel, so to speak, driven by a bot. But there's this long tail of things that come up once a year, and that requires this sort of ongoing finessing of the dialogue. What does the bot know? Curating the answers. And so I think the early adopters have started to realize that's a full-time job. The ones that have maybe done it and failed have said that's too hard to keep maintained, or someone called in with an obscure question and didn't know the answer. So I'll liken it to actually something that, I don't know if you've tried this out, there's Ask Kate in our event app that you're here. And so you can ask Kate questions, and we started with basically zero. There we go.
That was really interesting.
That was cool. So yeah, we've got this Kate bot that can be used for voice too. But she's essentially starting with zero knowledge at the start of this conference.
Oh.
And so if you ask her a question today, and we had an analyst ask just before the event, where is Maple Room 4? And Kate didn't know. The bot didn't know. Mm-hmm. And that was a frustrating experience for them. They're like, I got a tweet about it actually. But the next time you ask that question, a couple hours later, she knew. And that's because we had a human in the loop learning, teaching Kate how to respond. So that same sort of story applies to the voice space and voice bots. Customers will say anything, but they're also, we've over the years coached our client base to also be very robotic in the way they respond. So if you call, I don't know, an airline company, that they might have a voice bot. That first question that is asked, these days with the technology, you can actually say a sentence. And you can say, hey, I need to go from Boston to Vegas on Tuesday. But we're finding customers don't say that. And they don't say that because all these years we've been saying, say billing, right? So they're still using like these one-word intents that they're just not there yet. So there's a bit of a two dynamics at play. There's the customer dynamic of how are they navigating this world, and then there's sort of that enterprise dynamic of, well, what do we put in and what do we allow them to say, and when do we get out of the way and when do we connect them through? Yeah. And then lastly, because you're thinking about sort of adoption here, is there is so many tools out there now. We're finding that different parts of the business are starting to experiment. And then the IT group will have a bot that's built on one technology, and then that group, the customer service group, they've built another one. Marketers wanted to use conversational AI. So you've got these sort of disparate mix of I'll broadly say AI technologies that aren't necessarily knitted together, and I think that's sort of one of those problems.
From Kate?
Thank you. And so this is Cliff, who's just dropped off a T-shirt for us from Kate, which is that in the event app. Thanks, Cliff.
Kate heard you, or did you ask Kate for a T-shirt?
I think someone over here was talking to Kate in the background.
Very cool. All right, now that's a good answer. Let me ask you one last question, because a lot of these, seems like there's a lot more excitement from the B2C standpoint of leveraging these from a customer engagement, customer experience perspective. Where do you see this in the enterprise? Where do you see voice flourishing in the enterprise, maybe impacting employee experience?
So there are so many things happening in the workforce engagement employee space right now. It is getting a lot of love from AI, and there's some pretty cool, I guess, use cases that are coming to the fold. So let me also follow up with what's happening with B2B instead of B2C as well, because I think there's some new things there too.
Okay.
So on the employee side, there's a lot of AI that's going into just making their life better. And I think we're starting to see, at the moment, you'll have bots, voice bots in particular. You want to do a shift change? Hey, I'm calling in sick, or can I swap a shift with someone? We're starting to see those use cases come into the fold because it's more convenient than maybe having an app, or people don't have data, or they just want a voice interface because it's just easier, right? So if you can imagine for me for a second, being at home, you're a customer service rep, and maybe your kid's got a birthday or a baseball game that you need to get to. Very soon you'll just, hey, Google, I need to change my shift. Can you let my supervisor know, or whatever? And that'll be it. You walk out the door and pick up the baseball bat, you're done. Nice. So that's one. Secondly, again, that commoditization of speech is really important here. We're seeing real-time streaming of employee and customer conversation being transcribed in real time, and then suggestions being made to the agent on how and what they should do next. And so this is a bot without the face in a way. So it's still that same technology under the hood. It's voice recognition. It's also natural language processing. It's still intent detection. But instead of that being a bot that is conversing with the customer or the employee, it is that same technology that is just coaching the employee behind the scenes. And that's pretty cool, because you're starting to see this unlock organizational memory, if I can call it that way, because a bot is very smart, or it's got a long memory, right? So if you can put those cool little insights into it, you can bring someone in off the street, bootstrap them with a little bit of AI, and it's all that voice recognition technology, and they can get the benefit of the entire set. So that's another application.
And that one actually it's you're capturing the conversation in real time, but it's not just the text of it, it's the intent and the sentiment, and being able to turn that into like a next best action, basically.
Absolutely, that's exactly it. And I think there's more to come, right? And that, I think some of that more to come is what I'll call interaction summarization, and that's using technology called sequence-to-sequence learning, which is a machine learning, I won't call it a methodology, but a pattern, where you give the machine learning a little bit of a sequence, and you say, given this sequence, I want something like this. And you give it lots and lots of those things. And in this case, we give it sentences, you give it words, and you say, given this block of text, summarize it down to 2 lines for me. And so that sequence-to-sequence learning allows you to, basically for the employee, do like hands-off driving. They're having the conversation, and usually at the end of that phone call, you got to tag, what do we speak about, and I've got to do a follow-up, and now it's like hands-off, because I'm just having a conversation with you, and it's done interaction summarization, it's put it in CRM for me. Great, I talk to the next customer.
Call, right.
Yeah.
That's really cool. All right, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. One last question around, is the Google Home or the Echo device in your home, do they have Australian accents?
They do not, but my phone Siri does. So if I say, what's the weather like today?
Looks like nice weather coming up today, up to 23 degrees.
There we go. So Siri is the Australian male on my phone, at least.
Very good. And you even get the temperature in Celsius.
Absolutely.
There you
go. I don't get this other system.
Hey, well, I appreciate you spending some time talking. It's good to see you face to face. And
Thank you.
I know you got a lot going on the rest of the conference, so I'll let you get to it.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brent.